The smoke came before the screams. It always did in San Cristobal. The Serpiente cartel had learned that lesson early, that fire travels faster than rumor, and rumor travels faster than any sheriff's deputy out of Taos County. By the time the flames took the Reyes family's cornfield on the eastern ridge, half the village already knew who had done it. The other half pretended they didn't. Maria Reyes stood at the edge of what had been her family's harvest, her boots in the ash, her hands pressed flat against her thighs. She was 61 years old, and she had buried a husband and a son in that same red earth. She was not a woman who cried easily. But she cried then. She cried quietly, the way people do when they have run out of choices. The men who had come the night before left a message written on the side of her water tank in black paint. It was short. It was clear. It said that the next fire would not stop at the crops. Down the road, in the small square where the old church leaned slightly to the west, the other families gathered without being told to. They stood close together and spoke in low voices and watched the smoke column drift south toward the highway. Nobody called the police. The last person who had called the police was now living in Albuquerque under a different name, and even that hadn't felt like enough distance. San Cristobal was suffocating, slowly, methodically, field by field and family by family. The cartel was making the village into something it owned. 1,200 miles away, in a corner office on the 4th floor of a building that did not appear on any public registry, a phone rang twice. The man who answered it was named Harlan Webb. He was the kind of government official who wore good suits badly and spoke in the clipped shorthand of someone who had long ago stopped explaining himself to anyone. He listened for 40 seconds. He said 3 words. Then he hung up and pulled a slim folder from the second drawer of his desk. The folder had a name on it. One name. Webb stood at his window and looked out at the grey Washington morning, the Potomac just barely visible through the haze. He tapped the folder against his palm twice, the way a man does when he's already made his decision, but is giving himself a moment to feel like he considered it. Then he picked up a second phone, a different line, a different exchange, and dialed. It rang 4 times. The voice that answered was calm and unhurried, the voice of someone who had been awake for a while and was not surprised by the call. Webb didn't bother with a greeting. "New Mexico," he said. "San Cristobal. How soon can you move?" The answer came without hesitation. Webb allowed himself a small, tight nod. Good. He moved fast after that call, and by dawn he was already south of Albuquerque with the desert opening wide around him. San Cristobal came up slow on the horizon, the way small towns do in New Mexico. A water tower, a grain elevator, a smear of adobe rooftops pressed flat by the morning heat. Webb drove a rented pickup, dusty brown, forgettable. He wore a canvas shirt, jeans, work boots over the prosthetic legs. Nobody looked twice at a man like that rolling into a border county town before 7 in the morning. That was the point. He parked on the main strip and sat for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. He let his eyes move, not his head. Old habit. Good habit. The cartel compound sat 3 miles east of town according to the satellite imagery he'd memorized. A converted cattle operation, long, low buildings, chain link topped with razor wire, 2 guard towers that weren't there 6 months ago. Someone had invested serious money in that place, and serious money meant serious protection. He drove the perimeter road at 5 miles under the limit. The towers were manned. He counted 4 visible sentries and assumed twice that number he couldn't see. One of the guards tracked the truck with flat, patient eyes. Webb kept his hands loose on the wheel and kept moving. The rancher's place was a mile west of the compound, separated by a dry creek bed and a barbed wire fence that had seen better decades. Her name was Reyes, Marta Reyes. The file on her was thin but clear. She'd refused 3 buyout offers, filed 2 complaints with the county sheriff that went nowhere, and buried her husband the previous spring under circumstances the coroner had called inconclusive. She was still there. That told Webb everything he needed to know about her. She met him at the gate with a shotgun resting in the crook of her arm, barrel down, finger nowhere near the trigger. A woman who knew how to hold a gun without making it a threat. Smart. "You're not from the water board," she said. "No, ma'am." "Then say what you are." He told her enough. Not everything, never everything, but enough. She listened without interrupting, which was a rare quality, and when he finished, she studied him the way you study weather coming over a ridge. She might have said more, but the shot came first. A crack from the east, a spark off the gatepost 6 inches from Webb's shoulder. He was already moving, the bionic legs dropping him low and launching him sideways in one explosive burst, covering 8 feet before the second round hit dirt. He rolled, came up behind the truck's engine block, and the circuits in his left arm were already calculating angles, distances, the position of the sun. 2 shooters, maybe 3. Marta Reyes had not moved. She raised the shotgun to her shoulder and cocked it with a sound like a door being kicked open. "My land," she said simply. "My rules." Her rules. He could live with that. He came out from behind the engine block, low and fast, the servos in his left leg firing at 3 times the output a natural knee could manage. The first shooter never heard him coming. The second one did, but by then the man's rifle was already in the dirt, and his wrist was bent at an angle God never intended. 1. The third shooter broke and ran for the compound wall. He let him go. Running men talk. Running men lead you places. The stronghold sat at the edge of the flats like a bad idea someone had built in concrete and razor wire. $6 million in cartel product was somewhere inside those walls, along with 11 people from San Cristobal who had made the mistake of being in the wrong truck on the wrong Tuesday. He had the layout memorized. He had the guard rotation. What he hadn't counted on was Marta Reyes falling in behind him with that shotgun like she'd been waiting her whole life for exactly this kind of morning. She moved well, better than well. They came in through the generator shed on the east side, because power is the first thing you take. The circuits in his forearm ran the calculation in under a second. 2 pulls, the right cables, and the compound went dark. In the silence that followed, he could hear men shouting to each other in the blackness, the scrape of boots on gravel, the metallic clatter of weapons being raised by hands that couldn't see. He could see fine. He moved through the dark like a rumor, like something half remembered from a nightmare. Door after door, room after room. The men he found, he put down gently when he could, and less gently when he couldn't, and he didn't stop to count. The 11 people from San Cristobal were in the eastern storage block, zip-tied and frightened, but breathing. Every one of them. A young boy looked up at him with enormous eyes and said something in Spanish that roughly translated to, "Are you real?" He said yes. He said, "Go with the woman outside. She has a shotgun and she knows the way home." Hector Vega, the man who ran this operation, the man who had 6 million reasons to believe he was untouchable, was found in the command room trying to raise someone on a satellite phone. The call never connected. The phone didn't survive the conversation. 12 minutes. That was all it took to pull the whole rotten structure down from the inside. He walked out through the front gate as the sun climbed above the ridgeline and painted the flats in copper and gold. Marta was already there. The 11 survivors gathered around her like she was a fixed point in a spinning world. She looked at him. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Behind them, the compound settled into silence, and the desert took it back.